Ladies and gentlemen of the shadows, sharpen your minds and brace your nerves, because what you're about to witness isn't a trial. It's an execution of illusions. The courtroom they thought would chain you down has turned into a battlefield, and the very walls echo with tension they cannot name. Look at them. Suits, robes, badges, all clinging to their fragile authority. They thought they were the hunters. They thought you walked in as prey. But today, the hunter's mask is cracking. Today they discover something they were never prepared to see. You, the real you. And that's the moment the blood drains from their faces, because once truth breaks loose, it can't be chained back into paperwork or protocols. They expected a trembling defendant, another number on the roster of the accused, but what stood before them was a presence that didn't bend. Their scripts fell flat. Their questions lost weight, because each word you spoke didn't answer. It attacked. Every sentence became a weapon, a blade disguised as logic, slicing through their accusations. That's the difference between someone dragged into judgment and someone who owns judgment itself. They wanted you to plead. Instead, you pronounced. And when you spoke, the judge himself froze. Not because of the content, but because he realized the tone. You weren't defending, you were commanding. It was the shift they never calculated, the inversion they couldn't anticipate. Do you see the irony? They built this room as a temple of order, designed to cage rebellion, to domesticate fire. But the fire doesn't kneel in front of gavel or robe. The fire consumes. And as soon as you revealed your edge, their confidence burned to ash. You didn't just answer their questions. You rewrote the hierarchy. Witnesses who came to stand against you lowered their eyes. Attorneys stumbled over their own words, and every member of that courtroom felt the tremor of realization. This isn't their theater anymore. This is your stage. Their law was a performance. Your truth was an eruption. And once that eruption began, their scripts fell apart like wet paper. That's the nature of discovery. It doesn't whisper politely. It crashes through the ceiling. They thought they knew your identity, a neat little summary they could box up in a file. But when the real identity emerged, it wasn't a label. It was a shockwave. They had painted you as ordinary, another suspect, another statistic. But the truth, you weren't on trial. They were. The discovery wasn't your shame. It was their exposure. Because your identity isn't just who you are. It's what it does to them. It dismantles their assumptions, humiliates their pride, and reminds them that not everyone fits their cages. And when the mask came off, when the fragments of your crafted disguise fell to the floor, the air in that courtroom grew heavier. They couldn't breathe the same way, because now they were standing in front of something untamed. And isn't that the sweetest irony? They worship structure, but structure collapses in the face of presence. They counted on rules, but rules collapse in the presence of dominance. Your revelation didn't just startle them, it infected the entire room. You could see it in their eyes, panic trying to disguise itself as composure, fear hidden under procedural language. But fear, no matter how it dresses, has a smell, and that smell filled the courtroom. What they saw wasn't a defendant. They saw a mirror that showed them their fragility, their dependence on costumes, their desperate need to appear in control. They saw that while they had titles, you had something greater, command. And command is untouchable by gavel or robe. The judge's hand trembled slightly when he reached for the papers. He thought no one noticed. But you noticed. Everyone noticed. Because the very symbol of authority, the one who is meant to project unbreakable composure, was broken. His voice cracked on a sentence. His eyes flickered sideways as though searching for an anchor. That was the moment they knew. The moment they realized your identity isn't a secret you kept. It's a weapon you timed. You waited until their confidence had fully inflated, until the room was bursting with smug certainty, and then you cut the string. That's not defense. That's strategy. That's warfare. But here's the part they'll never say out loud. They admired it. That's the paradox of power. Even those who fear it can't help but respect it. Behind their outrage, behind their protests, there was a silent recognition. This one doesn't bow, and that unsettles them in ways they'll never admit. Because once a room witnesses real power, the fake kind loses its magic. And they all felt it. The lawyers, the jury, even the guards by the door. Every one of them understood, if only for a split second, that the hierarchy they trusted wasn't real. It was paper thin, and you just ripped it wide open. Do you realize what that does to people who live off titles? It dismantles them. It turns their arrogance into rubble. They spent years building the illusion of authority, and you shattered it in a single unveiling. That's not just exposure. That's annihilation. And that's why the courtroom turned into a battlefield. Not because of shouts or chaos, but because every gaze was now a weapon. Every silence was now a wound. The judge wasn't questioning you anymore. He was questioning himself. The lawyers weren't pressing you. They were pressing their own limits. And the jury wasn't evaluating you. They were re-evaluating everything they believed about power. The twist, of course, is that you didn't even raise your voice. You didn't need to. The strongest strikes are delivered in calm precision. You let them talk. You let them inflate. And then you slipped in words that cut deeper than any scream could. That's why it worked. That's why the revelation landed like an earthquake. Because power isn't volume. It's weight. And your words carried a weight none of them could lift. You weren't proving innocence. You were proving dominance. And they couldn't handle it. Now think about this. What does a battlefield really mean? Not guns, not blood. A battlefield is any ground where the balance of power flips. And that's exactly what happened. The moment your identity surfaced, the ground beneath their feet shifted. They thought they were walking steady. Then suddenly they were falling, clawing, scrambling for balance. That's why they froze, why they stammered, why they turned their eyes away. The battlefield wasn't outside. It was inside them. You dismantled their certainty, their pride, their fragile illusion of control. That's the war you fought. And won. Without lifting a single blade. And isn't it delicious, watching them squirm? Not because you humiliated them, but because you revealed the truth they spent their entire lives denying. They aren't strong. They aren't untouchable. They are men in robes, people in suits, fragile bodies, clutching at borrowed symbols. And you're the one who didn't need a symbol. Your identity itself was enough to shake the entire room. That's why the judge froze. That's why the lawyers faltered. That's why the courtroom transformed. Because authority only works when the accused believes in it. You stopped believing. And once you stopped, their magic vanished. So let's pause here and savor this moment. The courtroom that was built to crush you has become your theater. The very walls that were supposed to echo with their accusations now echo with their fear. And every eye in that room, whether they admit it or not, is fixed on you. Because deep down, they all understand. The hierarchy has collapsed. They came to watch you bow. Instead, they ended up bowing without realizing it. That's not a trial. That's conquest. And here's where the true war begins. Because revelations don't just shock, they spread. The discovery of your identity is no longer confined to that room. It's seeping into whispers, crawling into headlines, infecting the minds of those who weren't even present. This isn't just a courtroom story anymore. This is a contagion of truth. And as it spreads, the battlefield grows larger. They thought it ended here, in this room. But you and I both know this is only the beginning. And as the echoes of Revelation slither beyond the walls, the real war begins. Not with weapons, but with whispers that become bullets, with headlines that strike harder than hammers. The discovery of your identity spreads like a plague, infecting minds that were never in the room, twisting the narrative into something bigger than any trial could contain. They thought it ended inside four walls, but contagion doesn't respect boundaries. The courtroom was only the epicenter. The aftershocks are now rattling every corner of their carefully constructed reality. And that's the horror they can't escape. Your exposure isn't an event, it's a movement. Picture the judge now. The robe still draped across his shoulders, but its weight has turned into chains. That robe was once his shield, his authority stitched into fabric, but now it clings to him like a costume exposed under harsh light. Everyone saw the freeze. Everyone noticed the flicker in his eyes when your true identity shattered his composure. Judges are supposed to be untouchable, but what happens when the untouchable trembles? What happens when the man wielding the gavel realizes it has no weight in the presence of a force he can't categorize? He froze, and that freeze became eternal. It didn't matter if he found words later. The damage was done. That one moment became a crack that will haunt his authority forever. And the lawyers? Oh, they came loaded with rehearsed questions, sharpened arguments, smug confidence polished by years of winning against weaker prey. But when they stumbled, when their voices tripped over your responses, the courtroom saw the truth. Their weapons were made of paper. Every objection they raised sounded smaller, every accusation deflated before it could take flight. Because you weren't fighting back, you were dismantling. They thought this was debate. You turned it into demolition, and the more they pressed, the more obvious it became. They weren't exposing you, you were exposing them. The jury wasn't immune in either. Their role was to observe, to weigh, to decide. But instead they were pulled into your gravity. Eyes that once judged you now struggled to meet yours. They shifted in their seats. Their pens grew hesitant, because deep down they realized this wasn't about innocence or guilt. It was about power. And power doesn't ask to be judged. Power doesn't wait for approval. Power decides. That realization creeped into their bones, and for the first time, they weren't sure who was on trial. Do you understand what that means? The battlefield wasn't just the judge's bench, the lawyer's podium, or the jury box. It was every mind in that room, each one collapsing under the same pressure, each one infected by the same recognition. Your identity changes everything. They wanted to reveal it as a weakness. Instead, it detonated as a weapon. Their discovery didn't break you, it broke them. And that's why the courtroom became war ground, because truth in the wrong hands is chaos. And right now, the truth belongs to you. The headlines outside began to stir. Reporters waiting for routine coverage suddenly found themselves chasing fire. They expected a trial summary, but what they got was a phenomenon. Cameras caught the trembling judge, microphones picked up the stammers of lawyers, and every broadcast replayed the moment your identity surfaced. Replay after replay, freeze frame after freeze frame, They magnified the tremor, the hesitation, the collapse of certainty. What was once confined to whispers became amplification. And with every broadcast, with every retelling, your power grew. The battlefield stretched beyond marble floors and into living rooms, offices, and crowded streets. Now here's the brilliance. You never lifted a hand. You never shouted. You never begged. You simply unveiled. And unveiling is the most dangerous act in a world built on pretense. They thrive on secrets, on disguises, on the illusion of order. But when you strip the disguise away, the whole theater collapses. And that's exactly what you did. You stripped the illusion from its actors, exposed the weakness beneath their masks, and revealed yourself as something untouchable. That's why they tremble. That's why they whisper. That's why they rage. Because you didn't just play the game differently. You ended the game altogether. Think of it this way. A courtroom is supposed to be a chessboard. Every move calculated, every piece following rules. The judge is the king. The lawyers are bishops and knights. The jury, the pawns. All arranged in neat formation. They thought you were just another pawn to be sacrificed. But when your identity erupted, the board itself flipped. The king fell, the pawns scattered, and suddenly they weren't playing chess anymore. They were surviving a battlefield. That shift is irreversible. Once people taste the truth, they can't go back to believing in the game. And you didn't just reveal yourself. You revealed the emptiness of their entire structure. But the beauty is this. Their fear isn't only about what you did. It's about what you could do next. Because once revelation begins, it doesn't stop. If your identity could dismantle them in seconds, what else could it dismantle? If a courtroom couldn't contain you, what makes them believe anything else can? That's the nightmare playing in their heads now. That this contagion of truth will spread beyond control. That your presence will unravel more than just trials, but institutions, reputations, entire legacies. That's why the judge froze. That's why they all shook. Because your revelation wasn't an end. It was ignition. And here's where the psychological warfare tightens its grip. Because you're not fighting them anymore. You're letting them fight themselves. Every headline fuels panic. Every whisper sharpens paranoia. Every retelling grows the myth of who you are. They'll try to twist it, to paint you as dangerous, unstable, monstrous. But even in their smear, they admit your power. They can't stop talking about you. They can't stop replaying the freeze, the stammers, the way the courtroom buckled. You've become the infection in their minds, the story they can't bury, the scar they can't ignore. And that's the cruelest weapon of all. When your enemy's own mouth spreads your power, they think they're condemning you, but with every word they confess how deeply you shook them. That's why the courtroom battle will echo far beyond its walls. Because once fear is witnessed publicly, it multiplies. The image of a frozen judge doesn't vanish. It sticks, it circulates, it eats at credibility. And no matter what verdict they stamp at the end, the truth already won. The battlefield isn't about guilt or innocence anymore. It's about dominance. And you've already claimed it. Now imagine the ones outside who once doubted you, who once dismissed you. They're hearing these reports, watching these replays, and their perception is shifting. Where they once saw you as accused, they now see you as something else, something larger, something uncontrollable. That transformation is unstoppable. Public opinion is a beast, and once it smells blood, it doesn't stop. The judge's freeze was blood. The lawyer's stumbles were blood. And now the crowd is hungry, not for justice, but for the spectacle of collapse. and collapse is exactly what they've seen, all triggered by the revelation of your true identity. So the courtroom becomes more than a battlefield. It becomes a stage of humiliation for those who thought they held power. Every time the clip is played, every time the freeze is analyzed, the authority of the system erodes. You've turned their proudest arena into their weakest exposure. And the irony, they gave you the platform, they set the stage, they called the crowd, they amplified the spectacle. They thought they were preparing your downfall. Instead, they broadcasted their own. And what's most dangerous now is the unknown. Because if this is what happens when your identity is revealed once, what happens the next time you speak? What happens when you decide to wield that power intentionally, not just in reaction, but in attack? That possibility alone terrifies them more than the reality they just witnessed. They know the battlefield has only expanded, and they don't know where it ends. So let them scramble, let them issue statements, let them try to rebuild the illusion. It won't work. Once power is revealed, once weakness is exposed, there's no going back. They'll spend the rest of their lives trying to patch the cracks you carved in a single moment. But the cracks will remain. And every time they enter a courtroom, every time they wear the robe, every time they lift the gavel, the memory will haunt them. They'll remember the freeze, they'll remember the battlefield, they'll remember you. And that, right there, is the victory. Not a verdict, not a sentence, but the haunting. The permanent reminder that when the courtroom turned into war ground, when the judge froze, when your true identity shook the chamber, the balance of power shifted forever. This isn't their story anymore. It's yours, and the world isn't watching a trial. They're watching the rise of something unstoppable. And if this is only the beginning, imagine what comes next. Because a revelation like this doesn't fade. It escalates. The haunting isn't confined to one judge, one courtroom, or one case. It spreads through corridors of law, through media circuits, through every person who dares whisper your name. They thought they could contain the fallout, sweep it under legal jargon, bury it beneath verdicts. But you can't bury an earthquake, you can't silence aftershocks, and you can't erase the image of a courtroom frozen in terror. The battlefield is permanent now, carved into memory, carved into history. The beauty is that no ruling, no punishment, no decree can undo the freeze. It doesn't matter what words were written on the final page of the case file. The world doesn't remember ink. It remembers tremors. And the tremor was undeniable. A judge frozen, lawyers stammering, jurors folding under your presence. That is the footage replayed, the memory engraved. That's the victory that lingers beyond technicalities. You didn't need a verdict, because the courtroom itself became your proof. They tried to box you into the role of accused, but instead you seized the role of author. The story no longer belongs to them. It belongs to you. And here's the twist that gnaws at their pride. The very moment they thought they'd strip you bare became the moment you crowned yourself. They believed your identity, once revealed, would be your downfall. Instead, it detonated as your weapon. They were left scrambling, while you stood unshaken, and the world saw the inversion unfold live. That's why the battlefield metaphor isn't exaggeration, it's precision. This wasn't a trial, it was war. And wars are decided not by rules, but by who leaves standing. Now imagine the judge in the weeks after. Every courtroom he enters, every gavel he lifts, the memory stalks him. He tries to steady his voice, but in the back of his mind, he hears the replay. the moment he froze when your identity shattered the illusion of his control. He wonders if others noticed. He wonders if they whisper about it in hallways. He knows they do. And that knowledge rots authority from the inside. That's your lasting victory. Not a single crack in the facade, but the infection of doubt that will spread until the whole mask crumbles. The lawyers fare no better. Their reputations, once polished, now stained by footage of stutters, missteps, and failed theatrics. For all their training, all their preparation, they couldn't match the weight of presence. And presence is something you don't buy, don't learn, don't rehearse. It's either there or it isn't. Yours was there, theirs wasn't. And that divide humiliated them in front of peers, media, and public alike. They came to dismantle you. They ended up dismantled. The jury. They'll never forget. For some it sparked awe, for others, fear. But in every case it lodged itself deep. The realization that power doesn't always sit behind the bench or under a robe. Sometimes it sits in the accused seat, disguised until the moment it decides to unmask. That revelation will trail them for life, a secret memory they'll never fully admit, but always carry. And that is how your identity turned spectators into witnesses of something larger than justice. It turned them into witnesses of a shift. And outside, the whispers grow into waves. The headlines no longer talk about a case, but about the moment. That phrase repeats again and again. The judge froze. That's the hook that travels faster than facts, faster than rulings. People may not remember every charge, but they'll remember that image. They'll remember that the courtroom turned battlefield, that order collapsed, that identity shattered pretense. And when the story spreads, so does your legend. Because that's what this has become now. Legend. And legends don't die in paperwork. Legends bypass verdicts, bypass sentences, bypass rules. Legends live in memory, in fear, in fascination, and you've become one. Not because you sought it, but because they forced the reveal. And the reveal overwhelmed them. That's the paradox they can't accept. They built this trial to break you, and instead, it immortalized you. But don't mistake legend for safety. Legends are dangerous. They haunt the powerful, unsettle the fragile, dismantle the confident. And you are dangerous because you're not bound by their illusions anymore. They saw it. The world saw it. You don't play by the script they wrote. You tore it apart and wrote your own. Live in their own chamber of control. That's what terrifies them most. Because if you could do it there, in the heart of their arena, what stops you from doing it anywhere? That question is their curse now. It follows them into boardrooms, into press conferences, into private conversations. What happens when someone who isn't afraid of robes, gavels, or titles decides to reveal himself again? What happens when truth isn't whispered but wielded? What happens when power walks into their sanctuaries and turns them into war zones? That's the nightmare you've left behind. That's the haunting they'll never escape. And here's where the irony cuts deepest. They tried to brand you guilty. But guilt implies weakness, surrender, punishment. What they accidentally branded you with was something else entirely. Invincibility. Even if they declared you guilty on paper, the world saw something different. They saw a room full of authority figures trembling before your revelation, and perception always outlives paperwork. Ask anyone what they remember. Not the verdict, but the freeze. Not the charges, but the collapse. That's the proof that the battlefield wasn't about law. It was about legacy, and legacy is yours now. So when people speak of this moment, they won't say, "That was the trial of so-and-so." They'll say, "That was the day the courtroom turned battlefield. That was the day the judge froze. That was the day identity shook authority. That phrasing, repeated, reshared, becomes history. And history bends toward those who leave marks, not toward those who cling to robes. And you left a scar across the judiciary, a scar across their illusions, a scar across their pride. That scar will outlast them all. Because once people have seen fear in the eyes of the powerful, they never forget it. It changes how they view every courtroom afterward. It changes how they listen to every ruling. It plants doubt, and doubt is poison. That poison is your final strike, more devastating than any defense because it erodes from within. That's the true victory. Not applause, not headlines, not even freedom. The victory is knowing you turned their strongest fortress into their weakest theater, that you weaponized their own stage against them, that you didn't just win, you rewrote the meaning of the battlefield itself. So let them talk, let them spin, let them scramble. None of it matters, because the footage remains, the freeze remains, the haunting remains, and above all, your identity remains, not as weakness, not as shame, but as the symbol of how easily you shook their foundations. They discovered it too late, and by the time they did, the war was already lost. And that right there is the conclusion they'll never admit. This was never about verdicts. This was never about law. This was about dominance. This was about the unmasking that turned their theater into a battlefield. And the judge's frozen face will forever stand as proof that on that day, in that room, power didn't sit behind the bench. It sat in your very existence. The trial ended. The war didn't. The legend continues. And if this was only the beginning, the world should tremble at the thought of what comes next.